music, R&B, hip hop, pop,
I still get you.
reggae, EDM, indie, old school,
Side. Check it.
and sports talk.
Right here.
WorldStarHitRadio.com.
Welcome to Connecting Atlanta Radio, hosted on the #1 fastest growing internet radio station, WorldStarHitRadio.com, where we have always amazing guests every Tuesday from 7:30 p.m. Eastern to 8 o'clock p.m. Hosted right here in Atlanta at the WorldStarHitRadio.com radio station. Anyhow, we have a gentleman by the name of Kelvin King, who is a budding entrepreneur, business owner, and now turning his business from a one-man show to now has 5 employees and continuing to grow every year. So we look forward to seeing where he'll be at in the next 4 or 5 years from now. The name of his company is called Osprey Management. So one of my questions is, how did you come up with the name Osprey, and exactly what is that?
Well, thank you, Jackie, for hosting me here.
I forgot. There we go. Anything's possible in the radio stations. There you go. All right.
No problem. Osprey is actually the name of a bird. People who know me, they know that I'm a big wildlife fan. My whole life I've been an animal lover, and birds of prey are my favorite group of animals.
Of course they are.
And the osprey is, in my opinion, was one of the most, I guess, majestic or the coolest bird of prey out there. So I decided to name my company after my favorite bird.
Awesome. Okay. And how long has your company been around for?
Well, in its current form, it's been around for about 3 years. But technically, through the state of Georgia Secretary of State system, it's been around since '01. I thought I was going to be a big real estate tycoon initially, so I bought properties under the company. That didn't work out so hot when there was a crash in the real estate market, and I just had the company essentially on ice for a few years.
Okay.
3 years ago, I decided to restart it.
Nice. That's awesome. And so what do you guys do now if you're not really doing the real estate game anymore?
Right. Well, we stayed in the general sector. We're general contractors.
Okay.
We're licensed GC here in Georgia, but we focus only on commercial. We don't do any residential work, but we're builders essentially, focused on the government marketplace, and that is from federal government to local government, cities and counties and such, and state government. We do several projects with various state agencies in Georgia, from like the Georgia National Guard to Atlanta Metropolitan College, Atlanta Technical College, Cobb County, the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
We have a pretty broad client base right now.
Okay. And so what made you decide to move into, like, from bringing your company out and kind of going into that market? And do you work with the private sector, government sector? I know it's commercial, but...
Yeah, so I don't have a construction background. So,
okay.
So it's kind of interesting how it all started, but really I didn't know anything about construction. So if I look back on this, I say, I don't know how I got to this point, but I think it all played out the way it's supposed to play out. I'm a former Air Force officer, and my job when I was in the Air Force was procurement, so I did purchasing for the Air Force. And my last couple of years, I bought construction services, and I thought it was very interesting buying construction services. And after a few years of private sector work, I ended up working for a construction company, teaching government agencies how to buy construction services. It's kind of weird.
Wow!
Yeah, and after so many years of that, I took over construction operations for that company and did fairly well there. And I figured it's time to do my own thing. So I do have a lot of experience in construction, but it's just kind of weird. I never planned on going into construction.
And then now you own a company, general contracting company. And so you formally pretty much work within the government sector.
Yeah, that's my primary market. Like I said, we don't do any residential work, nor any private sector commercial yet. I'm not averse to going into private sector clients, like maybe a Kroger or racetrack or something like that. But
Right.
right now we just don't do that yet.
Okay. And so if you had anyone that was like, if you could provide like a tip for somebody that was looking to move into doing government contract work, what would probably be some suggestions that you would give when they're first getting started?
Well, I would say try it first. I mean, jump in with both feet. I think that people who, and this is just my opinion, but people who start their own company, they have a certain drive about themselves that they're not going to let themselves fail. So a lot of folks look at the government as a barrier for them because they don't understand how it works. There's a lot of paperwork. That paperwork burden can be overwhelming oftentimes. Sometimes it takes a while to get certain certifications. To get a contract, it takes a while. And it's just a somewhat of a mystical market for a lot of people. But once you get in there, and you don't necessarily have to have a great understanding, but just get in there. Just try to bid on a government contract, and you'll learn what you did wrong if you don't get it, and then you'll correct it next time. And at some point, you'll break that nut, and you'll be a government contractor. So my advice is just to do it.
Okay. And then so would like if someone really didn't know where to go, like where would people go to find and be able to bid on government contracts? How does that work?
I think there's a couple different angles to take. Clearly, any kind of relationship that you have with a company that's currently performing government construction or government contracting, talking with those people and getting advice and guidance from them, or going to the SBA's website. There's a lot of resources that the SBA stands for Small Business Administration. There's a lot of resources that they provide to assist, small and emerging businesses.
Okay, all right. And so from the day that you decided to start the construction division with Us for Management, have you guys just been off and running, extremely successful from day one?
We've been fairly fortunate, and I think it's because of just how anal I am when it comes to starting anything. Planning, I'm a big planner. So years before I left my old company to start this company, several years, I had already started planning, and I knew that the one impediment to business growth oftentimes is capital. So the first thing I did was decided to save money. I knew I was going to start a company. Like I said, people who are entrepreneurs, they have that fire within them. I definitely had that, and I knew that I needed money to do anything.
Right.
So
yeah,
it took me a couple years, but I started saving up, a decent amount of cash to start the company. And at the time, I was married at the time, and my wife at the time, she was on board with the plan. So, if two people are on board with the plan, you can definitely make strides. And we were able to save up some cash, and that's what I started with. I stepped out on my own and used that amount of cash to get what we call bonding capacity, which can be a huge hurdle for a small company in construction. Bonding is not required in all government contracts, but in construction, bonding is a requirement, and it can be a very difficult hurdle to cross because it's essentially cash. Basically, they want you to have enough cash to fund a job, even though you need cash to run the job.
Right.
So it's kind of silly in a way, but you've got to have enough cash to get bonding.
that's awesome. Hold on, I just want to make sure my phone's not okay. I was like thinking, oh, make sure phones are on silent. I saw something pop up. So I want to make sure my phone was on silent, or it would have been. Okay, and so so as you've are growing your business, all businesses have some type of adjustments and learning curves and so forth as you're going through. No matter how planned we are, we cannot plan for everything, right?
Definitely.
And so can you maybe share some of the lessons that you've learned, or how you were able to overcome challenges and different risks and stuff like that?
Okay. Well, I think I want to go back to planning because
there you go.
I think planning just puts you in such a position to succeed much more than going out without having the proper amount of planning. So, like I said, I saved a lot of cash, and I put together a 10-year plan. I worked in this I worked in this industry with the GC for 10 years. Prior to that, I was a contracting officer for 5 years. So there was a lot of education over those 15 or so years in this particular industry. And I wrote out a 10-year plan. I planned not to make any money the first couple of years. I was fortunate enough to save up enough money to not make any money for a little while, because I know how difficult construction is. There's a lot of risk in construction. You can get rewards, but the risk can be overwhelming.
Right.
So that's the leap that I took by just working that plan, the 10-year plan. And I mean, frankly, I didn't plan on having any employees for like 3 years. In the first couple of years, it was just Kelvin. I mean, I bid it on jobs. I bought the jobs out, so I did my own project management. When it was time to start the work, I went out to the job site with my hard hat and my boots, and I was the superintendent on the jobs. I picked up a shovel from time to time to help out when things didn't go right. There was a lot of adversity at times, especially when you're dealing with contractors that you don't know, or subcontractors that you don't know. So some advice, some challenges that I had that I was fortunate enough to be able to handle was, the whole contractual side, making sure you have very tight, well-written contracts, subcontracts, and that sort of thing. Because not everybody's your friend out here in corporate America. And,
You'd like them to be, but they're not.
No, and some people
or
are
ethical or honest or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, everybody's not honest.
No.
So ensuring that your contracts are tight, that you have enough capital, and pay attention to your cash flow. I have so many lessons. Pay attention to your cash flow. My contracts are paid when paid, so I don't get too stretched out. If my client is slow to pay me, I don't get too stressed out paying my suppliers and subcontractors. So that protects my fiscal position within the company. So cash.
So you make sure you have
king,
enough cash flow to cover all that in case. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And especially with government contracts, they usually pay out 30 days after, right? The invoice has been submitted and so forth.
It depends. Local and state government, sometimes they take a while to pay, 30 or more days. But the federal government, they're pretty quick. I mean, I don't normally receive payment past 30 days. Normally it's 2 weeks to 30 days.
Oh, okay. All right. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do any government contracts, try to work with the federal government because they pay you quicker.
I second that. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I think, okay, so here's a question. So you did recently start hiring some people this year, right? You kind of moved into a single man shop per se, not really,
right.
But to now kind of having that responsibility of other people's lives in your hands and so forth. So what made you make that decision to bring on your first, second, third, fourth, fifth employee?
Well, I mean,
at least the first, second. Yeah.
It's just growth. I mean, I started out working in an extra basement, an extra bedroom in my house. That was my office, was the bedroom in my house. It kept overhead low. But it was nice. And once, that first year, my first year, I didn't make a whole lot of money. I think we made 20 grand that first year. But the second year, I set up some opportunities, some contracts that came through, so I could forecast where I was going to end up that first year. So I was able to move up and work in the basement. So I was able to make my new office my basement.
Okay.
So like I said, it's important to plan, and I was able to, like I said, forecast and plan revenue and profit. And that second year, we went from about 24,000 the first year to about 100 grand the second year. So we're not talking about crazy numbers. Revenue numbers were strong, but as far as profit, they weren't crazy, and they weren't enough to bring on anybody. I felt as if I could handle the amount of work that I had at the time, but fortunately, the clients were happy and they wanted to come back and and use our services again. So I was picking up new clients, and my current clients were giving me more work. So that's when I knew that something's got to give. I can't drive to Nashville and drive to Columbia, South Carolina, and Augusta, Georgia, and all around Adventure, Atlanta with just myself. So because my operations were fairly lean, because the contracts continue to grow, that put me in a position to be able to sustain an employee, and I couldn't bring on the employee for what he was worth, honestly. So I had to cut him a deal. So being an entrepreneur oftentimes means being creative.
You're right, exactly. I would say
So
that. Yeah.
I had to cut him a deal where he made a lot less than he made in his previous employer, but I cut him a deal on share of some of the profit on the jobs he managed, which would have put him ahead of where he currently makes.
Right.
So he had a motivation to work hard for Osprey to make the money, and that helped me by having another employee to help with the operational load.
Right. And it also encouraged him to do an amazing job, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm all about incentivizing people.
Right, and I've been in sales for 15 years, so I'm all about being incentivized. So I think, and so that's I was going to say that's one of the biggest differences, I'm sure, and changes from when you've been working with Osprey Management, your company, as to when you were doing similar positions through other companies, is now you have the opportunity and the ability to be creative when it comes to making things happen, whereas when you're working for somebody else, you're living inside their box.
Right.
Now you're able to create your own.
You're much more nimble as a small company. I don't think that's anything new, but as you grow, it is important to create those processes and those procedures, or some people want to call them constraints, what have you, because it reduces risk. I mean, you can't expect every employee you bring on to be exactly like you, nor do you want them to be exactly like you. You want them to push the limit and push the envelope and try new things. And those are the kind of people that we hire. One thing that we say at Osprey is, before we hire someone, we say, well, we only hire superstars. So if you're not a superstar, or if you don't think you're a superstar, we don't need you. And I say that. I actually say that to my prospective employees. And we've been fortunate enough to bring on 5 superstars.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations with that. I think that's great because now you're creating jobs, right? That's much needed in our current economy, and thank God for the growth of everything that's happening as well.
Yeah, payroll is no joke though.
Right, I believe it. That's why you got to have like a payroll company just manage all that for you, right?
Well, it's just one of those things that's it's one of those scary things that you don't really think about. It's lingering as you grow, but I mean, every couple weeks you cut some pretty big checks, and I'm fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is a pretty big check.
Yeah.
But those employees are there to grow the company, and they earn their salary. So if they're not allowing the company to make more money than their salary, then I don't really need them.
Exactly.
So they understand.
They're supposed to be an investment into the company to help, quadruple your efforts, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And help you grow. So if your company could be anywhere in the next, 2 years, where would you like to see your organization?
Yeah, it's funny you asked me that question because right now I'm putting together a growth plan. I'm in the SBA Emerging Leaders Program. Okay. And the output of that program is to have a 4-year growth plan. So I know exactly where I want to be in 2 years. We do a lot of work locally.
I'm going to take that class too. It's pretty good?
You should. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of work outside of your day-to-day. But it gives you a real nice roadmap to where you want to be. But my next step, so I'm a service disabled veteran, and about half of my revenue is from the VA hospital system, be it hospitals or the cemetery administration. So half of the company's revenue is gained through that government certification. The other half of my company's revenue is just off of a traditional general contractor who won a state contract. I have a state contract here in Georgia that allows me to work with any state agency. There's about 15 companies across the state. We're one of the 15 companies. So that's a really good opportunity for us. So in a couple of years, I expect that contract to go from a couple $1 million to about $6 to $8 million. And that shouldn't be a problem because I grew that same contract in the previous company. So I don't really think that is too big of a leap. And
The
then,
company name changed, not the person, right?
pretty much, right. And on the federal government side, I'll be submitting my it's a program called 8A application for it's a small business development program. But once you get in that program, it allows you to market to a much broader federal government marketplace, and I anticipate that pretty much replicating the amount of work we'll get from our state contract. So I'm expecting to be about 16 million of revenue in 2 years.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so that's one of the biggest things I would say as well, is that when you're working as an entrepreneur, and that just because you're not technically in college or anything like that, business owners, entrepreneurs and stuff like that are continuing learning, growing as individuals, right?
Oh gosh, you
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
If you don't learn, you're gonna go away.
Right.
Because the market changes, your client base adjusts, and it's fluid, and you gotta ride those waves wherever the market goes and takes you. So you gotta learn the new construction techniques, the new types of contracts. You have to know all that sort of thing. The new regulations.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Especially when you're working with government contracts, for sure. So some of your with some of your customers that you've had, and they've renewed contracts with you, and they've stayed with you. What do you think is probably the difference between like yourself and other companies, whereas you've been able to retain those relationships?
That's an easy question. You teed that one up for me, I believe. But what differentiates us from most other companies is simple. Like, we don't get overly complicated. We just have very smart people, and we do what we say we're going to do. I mean, that's our tagline. But to me, it's more than a tagline. It's what we do. Everybody in my company, or anybody that I bring on board, or my subcontractors, know that our word means a lot still to this day. And if we say we're going to do it, we do it.
That's part of your motto or something like that on your website, right?
Yeah. We do what we say we'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of contractors don't always do that.
No. So that's awesome. Is there any last thing? Oh, well, how can someone find out some information about your company? And how can they find out info about you?
Yeah, you can always go to our website. It's www.contractosprey.com. That's CONTRACTOSPREY.com. Or call me. My phone is always on. You can call me pretty much 24 hours a day. My number is 470-216-2811, 470-216-2811. Or you can email me at kking@contractosprey.com. That's KKING at contractosprey.com. But we're always available. We're always looking for new subcontractors. You have to sign our paperwork, but we're always looking for new subcontractors, and that can be any trade, from concrete to roofing to flooring, interior finish out, drywall, framing and such. Grading. We look for. We can always bring on new grading contractors, masons, bricklayers. So we have mechanical, electrical, and plumbing companies. So we have room for lots of subcontractors to work with Osprey. And one thing I'm proud to say is that we've never lost a subcontractor.
Okay.
Now, I fired 3.
You fired 3. Okay.
Yeah, I fired 1 in Augusta, 1 in Nashville, and 1 in Atlanta. But we've never lost one.
Okay.
And our subcontractors are treated very well. We don't live off their money.
The hottest music, R&B, hip hop, pop,
I still get you.
reggae, EDM, indie, old school,
Side. Check it.
and sports talk.
Right here.
WorldStarHitRadio.com.